Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities in Miniature. It is time, once more, to give you that weekly dose of obscurities in literature. And this one may not be that obscure, but hey, you know what? It's an oldie but a goodie. I mean, this is, after all, the 90th. That is nuts. We're almost getting up to 100 years of Flash Gordon. Say what you will about Flash, but there is absolutely no denying the significance and impact of this book. And I think this is the third time I have picked up the first collection of Sunday strips. It's not my first exposure by any means, no. But Alex Raymond's art really just, it's one of those things that, you know, it's kind of the catalyst for everything that comes after it. Say what you will about the cheesy movies, bad cartoons, and what have you, but there is a pedigree of art that was absolutely unmatched. And just what he was coming up with at the time is just absolutely nuts. We're talking 1934 here. And that line work and the brush work was just like chef's kiss, you know? So anyway, this is the most recent publication by Mad Cave. I've had the checkered press versions. I always felt those were kind of muddy. I had the Titan versions, which were pretty cool, and they had a lot of later stuff that you don't usually see. But my Titan books were, I'll be honest, really kind of badly bound and ended up falling apart on me, which really kind of sucked. Because otherwise, and then the stuff on the cover was kind of scraping off, which was not cool either. But, oh, classic stuff. One of my favorites, absolutely, Undersea Kingdom. Always been one of my favorites. I remember a student in my 5th grade class when I was a kid had a copy from somewhere, and I remember the two of us just staring at that and just being blown away that this was, you know, from the 30s, and just what like Raymond was drawing, what he was getting away with in terms of just the costuming and stuff, the scenery blew my mind as a kid. Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with the movies and stuff, but it just wasn't the same. I mean, looking at that line work, nobody was doing stuff like that at the time, really. At least not in terms of comics. I think that's one of the important, you know, kind of specifics here. Always we have those early strips. One thing I always felt was that Raymond didn't have the greatest of backgrounds, but when he really got into it, he really got into it. And I think that's one thing guys like Al Williamson would later really just knock it out of the park. Al Williamson being another of my personal favorites. And I mean, you know, this is kind of quaint, even for its time. It's pretty nice. And it definitely kind of grows on you. But the thing that always stood out to me was absolutely the monsters and creatures that would become part of the strip as it goes, of which there were tons, were just like the weird sci-fi machinery. Always the castles and cities kind of hidden away everywhere. And just like the weird outfits they would come up with. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, the yellow skin may be a little dated, but given that this is getting close to 100 years old, I will cut it some slack. I always like this big monstrosity. This is a nice sized book, clocking in at just about 190, 200 pages or so. There's a fair amount of stuff to like. You've got like the various gladiatorial fights, but it's the later parts of the book, as we jump ahead, that I think Raymond's artwork, yeah, usually around this point, really starts to shine and really is at a whole other level. I was always disappointed with the lizard men in the strip. You know, and this looks like guys in costumes, which I thought was kind of sad. You can definitely see where there'd be a bit of Hal Foster inspiration. Here we go. This is, I think, about the time when things start to get really impressive. I forget which section this is. Just the use of line work, the shadows, even the colors always impressed me. I gotta say, this reproduction is pretty nice. I need to go back to the beginning and actually find it. It seems that way. I always thought his rocket ships were a little lacking. I think it's around this time he's mastered what he wants to do. Oh, the old Robin Hood guys. Come on, where's the section I want? Oh yeah, here we go. Once the octopus shows up. Queen Undina. Undina? I don't remember now. Yeah, Undina. Just, I remember being enthralled, and I can remember, so back, like I said, when I was a kid, 5th grade, about 10, 11, first stumbled upon this with a friend of mine, finding it in the school library. I swear he stole it. I know you, James. I know you took it. But because I went back like on a weekly basis trying to hunt it down, and I never found it, and it just drove me nuts. I always wanted to check it out. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he just stole it. But, you know, I'm like one of those teachers that these days, hey, you know, a book like that ends up in a better home and some kid really cherishes it that much, then, you know, mission accomplished. But please, kids, bring the books back to the library. Let other people read them. I was just always shocked at how scantily clad Raymond's women were and how he got away with it. I found that always very shocking. Like, I felt guilty looking at the books in school. Like, you know, I'm going to get in trouble for all these, like, scantily clad ladies. Because, of course, it's all ladies, right? Why wouldn't Raymond be drawing all the ladies? Of course, the men, like Flash, are dressed just as interestingly. I always remember looking at those seahorses. I want to say the book we had was in black and white. Like I said, I think the later strips, really, to me, are what stand out in terms of artwork. And I always felt like, you know, just the grandeur of it kind of set the tone for Foster wanting to do his Prince Valiant strip. And this is just the first book, but I think to me this is also the best of them. And while they do have a quite detailed introduction, you know, detailing Raymond's life, I am kind of curious to see just how far they go with these. Prices are pretty reasonable. It says it's cover price of $50. I don't think I paid that, but being that this is relatively new, you probably have a good chance of finding this if you are interested. I mean, really, truly, this kind of sets the tone. If you ever spend any time looking at Golden Age comic book material, it is ridiculous how many guys were just out there wholesale swiping stuff that Raymond was doing for every publication. It wasn't like only one company. I mean, it was all those guys were just out and out ripping off Raymond's artwork, if not totally just, you know, tracing it and swiping it in that regard. But this is where it really starts, and I think this is what really sets the tone for a lot of stuff that comes later. I always read a story about how the Superman creators based one of their, you know, ideas on Superman's costuming, actually, from how Flash is often dressed with the cape and, you know, tights in these stories. So it wouldn't surprise me, because just he strikes such a dramatic figure here. I don't know how many times I've read that introduction. But like I said, if you haven't had a chance to ever experience this, I think this is probably the easiest way to do it. And I don't know, I'm going to see about getting some extra copies possibly to donate to our own school's library. Because even though Mr. James, the guy sitting next to me, I'm not going to call him out by last name, just in case, used to sit next to me in 5th grade and was busy reading that, and yet I'm the one who got in trouble for it, and then it never came back to the school library. I want to make sure the future generations get their opportunity as well, because, you know, this is one of those things that really just kind of excited me. And I can remember, like, going to one of my dad's friends' houses, and he had one of the older reprints from, like, the late 70s or 80s, and, you know, just kind of making that connection. Oh, that's like that book I saw when I was a kid, and it, like, all came flooding back and, like, unlocked those memories from earlier in life. So I'm glad to have this, and I'm glad to be able to, you know, enjoy it at my own leisure. And I am kind of looking forward to grabbing some of the future volumes as well. So hopefully, if you haven't had a chance to ever check it out, you ought to give yourself that treat right away, right? So with that said, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye!